Hi everyone, this is video number 2 of my finds at the local Friends of the Library sale. They do it twice a year. This is the fall sale, and I'll get right into it. There's a kind of, as you're digging through the bins, there's another set of bins that has CDs behind the records, but there's a kind of a shelf that's built into the bin of the CDs where they put kind of the more I guess they consider more interesting or more collectible type, pricey type things. I don't know. But I always try to glance up there and just see if there's anything interesting up there. I found a Blue Note 10-inch, an early Blue Note. I think it's Meadlux Lewis or Albert Ammons Boogie Woogie piano type thing. But like I say, I always try to look up there and just you know, before I get too far into digging through the bins, and make sure there's nothing up there that's really good that I'm missing. And I just happened to glance up there early on and saw a little box set, a little 10-inch box set, and it had the name Clef Records on it. And of course I recognize Clef Records. That's Norman Granz of, most people know him from Verve Records. It's one of his early labels. There was Clef and Norgran, and then he went with Verve and sold Verve to MGM, and later started a label called Pablo. But he was one of the very important promoters and label heads in the jazz history. So I saw this Clef box set, and I knew I had to have it. I just snatched it right away and threw it in my bag. Didn't even look at it. I just knew it was something important. So it's called The Jazz Scene on Clef Records, and produced by Norman Granz. So I knew I had something interesting here and just threw it in my box, or my bag. And when I kind of got done going through the bins and pulling out everything that looked interesting, I took a little breather and opened it up, checked out what was inside. Right in the inside, it's got little, kind of a little narrative, a little explanation what the deal is. And when I got home, did some research what it was. Actually, I'll read the first bit of what it says in here. The jazz scene. This is from Norman Granz. This is my attempt to present the jazz scene as it exists today in the best possible fashion. And then parentheses, recordings in this album took place between 1948 and 1949. The album isn't trying to tell the history of jazz, nor is it, except by a kind of indirection, attempting to show the future course of this art form. Instead, it's an effort to mirror contemporary jazz. So what he's kind of trying to do is showing not like, you know, established jazz artists or make a history of jazz. It's like what's hot and happening at the moment. So it was originally released in I guess 1949. Originally released on a series of 6 78 RPM records, and this is the first reissue on 33 RPM records. So it was 6 78s, and when it's reissued on 10-inch 33 RPM, it's only 2 records. So there's only 2 records in the set. But what you've got here, you've got Charlie Parker, Neil Hefti, Coleman Hawkins, George Handy, Bud Powell, Duke Ellington, Ralph Burns, Willie Smith, Duke Ellington again, Neil Hefti and Charlie Parker, Lester Young, and Machito and Flip Phillips. So interesting little collection of what was hot in jazz in 1949, probably kind of the cutting edge in jazz in 1949. You know, no Benny Goodman or things like that. So a really neat little box set. I'll have to do some more reading up on this and see kind of more what the deal is, but I knew that was something interesting, and it didn't have, it looks like there was a price sticker on the one time and someone peeled it off. I swear to God I did not pull the price sticker off on this, because when I was a little discouraged, because I knew when I got to the front I'd have to kind of ask them, you know, can you price it please? I showed an album, and yeah, it was a 3 LP set from Bethlehem Records. Same thing, when I got to the front I had to show them these two things and say, you know, There's no price on these. I looked through the bag. There's no price sticker that came off and fell off of my bag. You know, could you guys please price these, and maybe I'll come back and buy them. I really want them. But the lady, before I even said all that, she said, well, you know, we normally price stuff, or stuff that isn't priced, it's normally like $1 or something. Would you pay $1 for it? And I said, yeah, I'll pay $1 for that. So I didn't pull a fast one or anything. I swear to God, I didn't pull the price sticker off. I assumed they'd probably price this at $10 at least. But for $1, yeah, sure, I'll buy it. So I was pretty happy about that. Let me jump now to, jumping around a little, to the 45 RPM. They had a whole bunch of 7-inch singles, and most of them were just in generic sleeves or just loose even, which kind of discourages me. Excuse me here. But I picked out a few that looked interesting. First up, one that was just loose, but I bought it because really cool recordings. This is King Pleasure, a track called I'm in the Mood. And King Pleasure was a singer, and what he did is he took, this one is a James Moody composition, I believe, or maybe not. I guess there's a track that James Moody, the sax player, made famous. But it's I'm in the Mood for Love, basically, or I think it later became known as Moody's Mood for Love, something like that. But King Pleasure took the music from that and improvised some vocals and came up with this track, I'm in the Mood for Love. And the B-side is called Don't Get Scared. Looks like Stan Getz maybe wrote the music to that one. These were both produced by Alan Douglas, who was a jazz producer originally, I think, and then got into rock, infamous for producing Jimi Hendrix, and after Hendrix's death, releasing some stuff with Hendrix playing on it, and bringing in other musicians like guys from the Knack, but that's another story. But these are both really interesting. It's kind of style they called vocalese, where musicians took, like, jazz guys took existing music and kind of improvised lyrics to it and came up with something new. Annie Ross was another singer that's well known for that. She came up with a song called Twisted, where she took a Wardell Gray saxophone piece and came up with some lyrics to that, and that was a big hit. So really cool, interesting little piece of jazz history there. And speaking of jazz history, I found this in the 7 inches. This is a Sidney Bechet on Vogue. It's a French pressing on the Vogue label. Let's see, Souvenirs de la Nouvelle Orleans. So I guess it's a souvenir of New Orleans, what you would say. Sidney Bechet, Claude Luther, et son orchestra, and his orchestra, on a really pretty Vogue label there. Kind of some, I guess, Dixieland type jazz here, or kind of getting in the swing. I don't know a whole lot about Sidney Bechet. I recognize the name, of course. I think he plays clarinet. Yeah. But yeah, cool to have for the collection here. I think I paid 50 cents for this. No, 75 cents. Didn't have anything on the Vogue label. I always wanted to pick up something on that Vogue label. Very important French jazz label. Alright, so getting into the LPs, this one's pretty cool. It's an RCA Victor stereo pressing. It's Paul Desmond featuring Jim Hall, the guitarist Jim Hall, called Easy Living. Paul Desmond, of course, the sax player with Dave Brubeck, and just a beautiful, beautiful tone who was playing. Jim Hall, great guitarist. Gene Wright on bass, Percy Heath on bass, Connie Kay on drums. So great band rounding it out. This is a it's like a Dynagroove pressing. That's just what you got from RCA in this time period, 1966. But yeah, should be cool. I'd never really seen this before, but when I saw Paul Desmond and Jim Hall, I knew I had to have it. Should be good. Next up, beautiful, beautiful near mint, except for a little bit of tear at the top. Atlantic stereo pressing. Another one for the collection. This is Herbie Mann. The Beat Goes On. I got some kind of pop art, cover art there. And of course he's playing The Beat Goes On, the Sonny Bono song. But yeah, kind of playing some, he played a lot of kind of like what was hot on the pop charts at the time. By this period, this is 1967. But who else is on here? Let's see. Roy Ayers on vibraphone, Reggie Workman on bass, Bruno Carr on drums, Don Friedman piano, Attila Zoller guitar. So some pretty good, yeah, some pretty good musicians on here. And like I said, it's Atlantic stereo pressing. Got that nice, kind of cool label there. But yeah, this is just in beautiful shape for $2. Why not add it to the collection? I've probably got way more Herbie Mann than any human being needs, but you know, I find it. I always think of him as being kind of like a cheesy musician by this point in his career, but I'm surprised by how good these albums are, how much I enjoy them. So maybe I've always had it wrong in my head. It's just that damn cover art from the Push album where he's bare-chested. It just soured me on Herbie Mann. Unfortunately, he should have never done that. So moving on. This one not really jazz. It's well, you'll see. A soundtrack from the motion picture The Wild Angels, starring Peter Fonda and Nancy Sinatra. And the reason I picked this up, yeah, it's kind of cool. Period piece here, but it's got a lot of music by Davy Allen and the Arrows. He was a guitar guy, kind of I guess kind of like I'd describe it, kind of like the Ventures, almost like surf rock, but more kind of fuzzed out and distorted. So a lot of really cool instrumental things, including a track Blues Theme, which I guess is a fairly big hit for Davy Allen. Yeah, cool on Tower Records. I'm not really familiar with that label. It's not really in the best of shape. It's pretty scuffed up looking, just little superficial scuffs, but it actually plays really well. It just looks pretty crappy. But music's what's important here, and it sounds pretty good. So yeah, I'll stick that in my guitar rock collection, my Ventures records. And next up, some more jazz. This is, well, jazz from Peter Gunn, the Joe Wilder Quartet. Joe Wilder, trumpet player. Nice Columbia stereo pressing here. Who's in his band? Milt Hinton on bass, Hank Jones on piano, and Joe Cresci Jr. on drums. Haven't heard of him. This is from 1959. So jazz from Peter Gunn, music by Henry Mancini from the TV series Peter Gunn. Really nice pressing. It's a little dirty, but in really good shape. Nice Columbia 6i stereo. And took a couple listens to the music, and it's really quite good. The weird thing is there's no they don't play the theme from Peter Gunn. I've seen a lot of these albums that West Coast jazz guys playing kind of the TV jazz music, and they always play a version of Peter Gunn, the theme, but not on this one. Kind of a disappointment, but because I really like that track. But definitely another one from my TV jazz, cops and private detectives and spy type music. Alright, next up, this is on the Bob Thiele, never quite sure how you pronounce this guy's name. He was the big producer at Impulse, and it's probably the height of its popularity with John Coltrane and Alice Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders and all those guys, the early Gato Barbieri, things like that. Yeah, the really important years, I'd say. But this is his label, Bob Thiele Music is the label. It's kind of weird. I've seen Flying Dutchman, but this is the Big Three: Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, and Ben Webster. And I guess it's kind of an archival recording. These are original 78 RPM recordings. So, you know, kind of a historical reissue type thing here. Yeah, not bad. I think it was $250. Kind of a little pricey. I mean, it's in a little bit rough shape, and most people wouldn't necessarily get it. But I don't know, with the name Coleman Hawkins and, you know, Lester Young, Ben Webster, I thought somebody might, who knows, jazz might snatch this, so I decided to grab it before it went. There's the little logo from the label there. It's kind of a, this sale is kind of I always look at it as like you kind of come in with a strategy. I want to grab I always grab anything that looks interesting and throw it in my bag. And then later I go through and pick out like, okay, what do I really have to have today? And now what am I willing to take a chance on if I come back in a couple days when it's half price day? Or am I willing to take a gamble on that someone else won't snatch it? So I tend to leave behind stuff that, you know, like the Joe Wilder thing that most people wouldn't recognize the name, although that's got like kind of a flashy graphic on the cover and people might be, well, that looks cool. So if something's got a name people wouldn't recognize and kind of a boring cover, I might leave it behind in the hopes that no one else will grab it and I can get it for half price in a couple days. And, you know, just kind of stick it in the classical band where most people don't tend to look. But there's a few things though, when you see it, you just say, well, it might be a little pricey, but I have to have it because if I leave it, someone else is going to snag it. And this is a good example. This is on Prestige, Stereo Prestige pressing, Brother Jack McDuff, Hot Barbecue. So Brother Jack McDuff on organ, George Benson on guitar, I guess an early recording session for George Benson, Joe Dukes on drums, Red Holloway on tenor sax. Really nice soul jazz. This one's in really nice shape. Most of the Prestige I see from this era are kind of beat up. This one's surprisingly in really nice shape. So I paid $7.50 for this, which I thought was more than fair. And it's blue, Prestige blue label with the silver trident. Slightly rough, not bad. Definitely needs a good cleaning. But yeah, just some good funky soul jazz here. So yeah, that's something like I definitely wouldn't leave behind, because someone who's not even that familiar with jazz, you know, people with just kind of a loose familiarity with jazz, I think would recognize the Prestige label or just say, well, this looks like it's some funky R&B or something, and snag it. So I didn't want to leave that behind. Moving on, a little compilation here from the MRC label. This is Jazz of 2 Decades, volume 2 maybe? No, just Jazz of 2 Decades. Of course, MRC, you know, the name kind of comes from Mercury M Records Corp. RC, MRC. Stupid trivia. So it's jazz from the 40s and jazz from the 50s. Yeah, for 50 cents. I think I've seen this in sales past and just kind of left it because it's got like a really cloudy look to the vinyl. I don't know if you can see that there. Not shiny at all. So who knows if it's a good pressing or not. Pretty clean pressing. It's not scratched up bad. But let's see some of the music on here. So from the 40s, it looks like you got Bud Freeman, Joe Turner, Billy Taylor with Johnny Hodges, Coleman Hawkins, Charlie Ventura with Kai Winding, Lenny Tristano. Actually, that might be the 50s stuff. No, that's the 40s, I think. And the other side, okay, yeah, jazz from the 50s now. You've got Clifford Brown and Max Roach, Sarah Vaughan, Errol Garner, Clark Terry, Dinah Washington, and Julian Adderley, Cannonball Adderley. So a lot of good musicians on here. Should be a good compilation for 50 cents. I was not going to pass that up. And some good historical info on the back that kind of explain the different styles of jazz, different locales, comparing them: New Orleans, Chicago, Kansas City, Ellingtonia, whatever that might mean. I assume it's Ellington's own personal style, swing, bop, avant-garde. Okay, moving along. This looked interesting. It's on the Somerset label, kind of an oddball label. Occasionally they have some pretty interesting looking jazz, but it's one of those things where most people wouldn't pick it up because they're like, I've never heard of these guys, I've never heard of the Somerset label, or if they have heard of it, it's just some garbage at the thrift store. But it's the Phil Moody Quintet, Three's a Crowd When It's Intimate Jazz. So this looks like some really just generic crap that you see in a thrift store, but I always look at the back in the notes, kind of read the notes, see if there's any indication who plays on it. And there's some interesting players on here. In addition to Phil Moody on piano, you've got Jack Sperling on bass, haven't heard of him. Paul Horn on flute, good flute and I guess at one time a sax player, but later on recorded a lot of flute stuff, like he did the Inside the Taj Mahal thing, Inside the Great Pyramid. Al Hendrickson on guitar, I've heard of him before. Roland Bundock on drums, Gene Estes on vibes. So it sounds like a pretty cool band. Vibes, Al Hendrickson on guitar, Paul Horn on flute. Should be good stuff. I think this was an LA based label, Somerset. I could be wrong, so should have that West Coast jazzy type sound here, I think. So for let's see, the blue means 75 cents, so worth taking a shot there. Next up, well, everybody knows who this is. It's on Audio Fidelity. Audio Fidelity put out some of the earliest stereo records, kind of first on the market, showing off stereo sound with stereo pressings. This I don't think is one of those very early ones. This is from probably the 1960s, sometime around there, I can't really tell. But this is Louis Armstrong. Satchmo plays King Oliver. And I've got another Louis Armstrong. Actually, the only other Louis Armstrong I had on vinyl was another one on this Audio Fidelity label. But they did really nice stereo pressings, and they were, I think, the first on the market, or one of the very first, along with, I think, the classical label Urania in 1957, I think, is when they came out. But looks like it's still in the original plastic bag. Yep, that's it. I don't know if you can see, it says Audio Fidelity. Audio Fidelity for those who can hear the difference. A study in high fidelity sound. So that's kind of cool, having the original inner bag there. You can see the Deep Groove label there. Pretty neat. Yeah, so some Louis Armstrong for the collection. Should be a nice quality stereo recording, kind of like the RCA Living Stereos, or it's always a pretty good bet. Yeah, a little bit rough, but $4. Yeah, sure, I'll snag it. So my battery looks like it's about to die, and I'm just gonna cut this one off at this point. Still got plenty more records to go through, and I don't want this video to be too long, so that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and keep an eye out. I've got more coming from Friends of the Library sale. Bye.